Hey, how's it going, everybody? Chris Trapasso here, and this is the Week 11 episode of my show, weekly show, All 32, in which I give you a stat nugget, an observation, just a general philosophy for all 32 teams in the NFL. I don't remember last week if I started with the NFC or the AFC. I'll start with I think I started AFC last week, now that I'm thinking of it. I'll start, and if you see me looking over here, I just have a note sheet that I will refer to throughout the show. I will get right into it as I normally do, starting with the NFC East and the team that I always begin with on the NFC East side. Let me put my table up a little. There we go. Framed a little bit better. The Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones feel like they're still in it. They get a resounding win over a very bad Las Vegas Raiders team on Monday Night Football. With all the stars, they are in Vegas. And they're currently 10th in the NFC. Jerry Jones said before the trade deadline, I feel like we're still in it. He makes two reasonably big trades. Certainly the Quinnen Williams trade was a big one. And trades for Logan Wilson, who made some plays at linebacker, which is just a whole nother thing that he's not good enough for the horrible defense of the Cincinnati Bengals, but he's good enough for the previously pretty bad defense in Dallas. It's kind of a weird situation. I think we will find out about Dallas in the next 3 weeks. It will either be obvious that Jerry Jones was right and that they absolutely are a team that needs to be taken somewhat seriously in what has become a pretty competitive and I think totally wide open NFC, or they're going to be in that laughingstock situation like they've been in many times over the last 10 years in the Jerry Jones era, the Dak Prescott era, you could call it too. The next 3 games for the Dallas Cowboys will tell us everything we need to know about this team. They're a game under 500. They have that weird tie that might loom large later in the season to the Packers earlier in the year. The next 3 games for Dallas: Philadelphia Eagles, Kansas City Chiefs, and Detroit Lions. 2 of those teams they're technically chasing in their own conference, and for the Eagles, of course, in their own division, but they have a huge lead. We will see if this style of Cowboys team that can score at will. They have very good running back. It was one of the best signings of the offseason in free agency. Javonte Williams has been great. The offensive line is very good. And in most games, Dak Prescott has lit it up through the air, especially when he's had CeeDee Lamb back. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens out-targeted him, outperformed him. I mean, they both were really good in that game against the Raiders, but they have 2 high-level wide receivers. They can make a case as the best wide receiver tandem in this 2025 season. They have a good tight end in Jake Ferguson, who always looks bigger to me than I remember him at Wisconsin, but he's a very good 3-down tight end, good offensive line, good running backs, and a pretty good quarterback. So we will see. I want to just put this Cowboys season on hold. Let's get back and talk about where this team is headed. What direction are they going after the next 3 weeks against Philly, KC, and Detroit? Next team in the NFC East, Washington Commanders. I just have one question about the Commanders. At this point, the season is done. I mean, for as much as I'm the biggest proponent of, hey, there's still a lot of games to be played. Things happen crazy in the NFL all the time. Teams go on runs. Teams get hot. Teams get cold. Leads within a division that are 2 or 3 games with 6 or 7 to go can vanish. But at 3-8, given their injuries, given how this team is currently constructed, especially on the defensive side, doesn't give me, and I don't think any Commanders fans, a lot of hope for going on some run against Denver, Minnesota, New York, Eagles, Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles to end the year. So I have one question. If you are the Washington Commanders, you're their front office, you're the coaching staff, and say maybe it's not this week against an elite level defense at home against the Denver Broncos, but maybe the following week on the road in a dome against the Minnesota Vikings, or the following week on the road against the Giants. Do you put Jaden Daniels back out there? If you are 3-9, 4-10, do you put Jaden Daniels on the field in meaningless games when he's dealt with these injuries this season? I don't think you do. I mean, we would be getting to the point, and there is potentially another team that I'll get to on the AFC side that I think you can pose the same question to. But if I'm running the Washington Commanders and I understand that Jaden Daniels is our most valuable commodity, he is going to be entering his third season, still very cheap, reigning offensive rookie of the year. And when healthy, he is, I mean, last year he was a borderline elite quarterback that was integral in your team and making that wild card run all the way to the NFC title game. I don't think at 3-10, or even if you're 4-9 in 2 weeks against the Giants on the road, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, and that defense, that you trot him out there. I think you say, you know what, we're going to shut him down. And frankly, for as much as fans in the moment might not love that, at that point, I don't know if you necessarily want to start winning games. You want to get better draft position to continue to build around Jaden Daniels on offense and certainly add to the defense. I brought up the New York Giants. That's the next team here on all 32. The Giants right now, I think, are playing better football. They were even playing better football right before Brian Daboll was fired. But they are 1-5 in one-score games this season, which is at the polar end of where they were, speaking of Brian Daboll, in 2022, when they went 9-4 in one-score games and were like running off these win streaks where they were just winning one-score game after one-score game. Such is life in the NFL. You can't continue to lean on winning one-score games and expect it to just continue forever unless you're like the dynasty Patriots. The Chiefs have been really good in one-score games historically in the Mahomes-Reed era, but after going 11-0 in those one-score games last year, they're 0-5 to date this season in those one-score games. So I think when you see the Giants, if your team's playing the Giants, and now maybe it's going to be Jameis Winston for a couple weeks, maybe it's Jackson Dart when he gets healthy off that concussion, I think it's easy to think, okay, we're playing the Giants. That's an easy win. The defense is good, and even without Malik Neighbors, they can move the football a little bit. And even without Cam Scadaboo, Tyrone Tracy just a year ago was like that darling of a late-round pick at running back. The offensive line isn't great, but it's better. Theo Johnson was one of the most athletic tight ends we've ever seen at the Combine 2 years ago. He's starting to make some plays. Wendell Robinson is a pretty fun and explosive slot receiver. And Darius Slayton is just your classic vertical threat that knows how to get open. He's a veteran. He's a quality player. So this team is, I do not think, is quite as bad as their record, but they are the prime example, and it's kind of fitting at the end of the Brian Daboll era, comes full circle to the beginning of the Brian Daboll era, where they incorrectly thought that Daniel Jones was the guy and Daboll and Shane were, these foundational pieces, and the team was really good because they were fortunate in a bunch of one-score games in 2022. Philadelphia Eagles. This one is crazy. This nugget is going to blow your mind. But if you've watched a lot of Eagles games, maybe not. Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles have the worst, or I should say highest, three-and-out rate in the NFL. So the Eagles have the highest three-and-out rate in the NFL at over 40% entering Week 12. Like normally, those rates of how often your offense goes 3-and-out, the teams at the top are usually like the worst teams in the NFL. The worst offenses, the worst quarterbacks, offensive line, receiving group, not good. This is the Philadelphia Eagles, the 8-2 Philadelphia Eagles, reigning Super Bowl champs. And they have the highest rate of going 3-and-out in the entire NFL entering Week 12. Now, you could say, if you're an Eagles fan or you're just a believer in the Eagles, well, hey, they're doing that and they're 8-2. So eventually they're probably not going to be quite as bad at 3 plays and then punting. And you're probably right. Like it wouldn't shock me if they improve a little bit down the stretch in that regard. But then there's the flip side of that is, are they kind of playing with fire a little bit where they're not that efficient offensively? They're going 3-and-out at almost half the time that they get the ball, and they're still squeaking out wins. You can look at it either way, but I just wanted to point that out. I saw that this week. 3-and-out at like 42% of the time that they have the football. The Eagles are 3 plays and punt. NFC North. Green Bay Packers. I did a TikTok video earlier this week on Jordan Love, and a week ago was like, I don't know what to do with this Packers team because they have all these stars and they have the high EPA and a good play caller. I think a great play caller. It was strange to see after the loss, the 2-game losing streak going into week 11, the calls for, oh, well, if they don't make the playoffs or if they don't like win a bunch of playoff games, then Matt LaFleur is going to get fired. I think that would be insane, especially because he's an offensive-minded guy from the Shanahan coaching tree. But this past week, after the 2-game losing streak, Jordan Love has a game in which he completes only 54% of his passes. And it's like, oh, man. But 3 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, and a bunch of drops from the Packers receivers. So the video that I posted on TikTok earlier this week was the classic statistics lied when you were looking at Jordan Love's performance in week 11. His adjusted completion rate was much higher because those discount drops, they count drops as completions. That's why I love adjusted completion rate. 3 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays. It wasn't the prettiest game for the Packers, and I think if you are a diehard Packers fan that's seen a lot of good quarterback play over the last 30 years, you want to see more efficiency and a cleaner game. But in an ugly game, when he needed to make the super challenging, tough throws, like the game winner to Christian Watson, he came through. 3 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays for Jordan Love this past week. Minnesota Vikings. Something is up with J.J. McCarthy. Like, he is not playing, and I know there's memes all across the internet of, like, the whole 9 persona and how cheesy that is. And, all right, I can get on board with that being a little bit cheesy, corny, whatever you want to call it. But, like, this is not – I mean, he's still very young, and I'm not one of those guys that 5 years into a player's career, I'm like, oh, well, he's still young. He could get better. You usually know early on. But I do think it is important to remember that J.J. McCarthy did not play as a rookie. Like, we're seeing these big steps from Drake May, and Jaden Daniels already won Rookie of the Year. Caleb Williams in his own division is 7-3 and playing good football. Bo Nix has the Broncos right now as the 1 seed or 1 or 2 seed the 2 seed in the AFC. So it's like, where's J.J. McCarthy? Where's his progress? And people are wanting to paint him as a specific player, like 6 starts into his NFL career. I don't think it's fair to do that. But his adjusted completion rate right now, J.J. McCarthy, is 69.6. That is like ridiculously low. And I know maybe it's if you're not familiar with adjusted completion rate and where the best quarterbacks normally are in that stat or where the worst quarterbacks normally are, the best quarterbacks, or let's say the most accurate quarterbacks in adjusted completion rate, are normally like in the low 80s. And the worst quarterbacks are usually right here in terms of their accuracy, like mid to high 60s. This is not a quarterback in J.J. McCarthy who was woefully inaccurate at Michigan. His final season with the Wolverines, his adjusted completion rate in college when they won the national title was 80. And that was anyone that was even not the biggest J.J. McCarthy fan pre-draft would admit to you, like, no, I didn't have a huge problem with his accuracy. There weren't times where he was just firing the ball 10 yards over a receiver's head or missing low or not throwing in stride. And he's doing that coming back from injury in this very quarterback-friendly Vikings system and environment. So I think more so than anything else, yeah, he probably needs to scale back some of the risks that he's taking, but just hitting those layups, taking the easy completion on first down, seeing an open Justin Jefferson and throwing a strike, getting back to the fundamentals with his mechanics, I think is more important than anything else for J.J. McCarthy, who has never really had a problem with his accuracy, but is having huge problems with it after he's returned from that ankle injury over the last couple of weeks, when the Vikings offense has kind of gone into a tailspin. Speaking of inaccuracy, Detroit Lions. I kind of jinxed the Lions, so to speak, last week, I guess, that I talked about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I did a TikTok video on it. I talked about it on here, that he has become the surest bet in the NFL at wide receiver. He was the 4th most targeted wide receiver in football from 2022 through week 10 of last year. And he was the only most targeted receiver in the top 10 who had a catch rate over 70, and his catch rate was like almost 76%. And then this past week, in that loss for the Lions, he was like not able to connect with Jared Goff like 4 or 5 times. It was crazy. But I want to focus on Jared Goff. The fourth downs were mostly on him. Like 3 of the 4 or 5 were just blatant misses. And talk about a quarterback that's never really had accuracy problems. Goff's never had him in the NFL. I mean, going back to his time with Sean McVay, that was never really an issue. It was always, under pressure, not really that mobile. Doesn't feel like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Just has no mobility. But inside the pocket, he's pretty accurate. He knows where to go with the football. His adjusted completion rate this past week, Jared Goff's, 48.4%. That is, I don't know if I've ever seen that before. It's ridiculously low. So I do think it was an aberration. I don't think we're going to see this on a routine basis or Jared Goff has just fallen off a cliff. But I had to mention that adjusted completion rate under 50% is like astronomically low. You never see it that low for a starting quarterback, particularly a quarterback like Jared Goff, whose strength of his game is being pinpoint accurate with the football. Last team in the NFC North here on week 11's edition of All 32, Chicago Bears. They are 7-3. And I said it, I think last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, that like, I think this Bears team is going to make the playoffs. And I said that from not an analytics perspective or even a film perspective. It just felt like every year in the NFL, sometimes there's 2, but usually there's at least one team in each conference that sneaks in, and sometimes they win the division and they host a playoff game, or they sneak in as one of the wild cards. And you're like, oh, that team's like kind of flawed, but they've just gotten a lot of lucky bounces and things have gone right. They've stayed healthy. They played a lot of bad quarterbacks. They faced a lot of backups, whatever it is. And they sneak in because the Bears are winning all of these tight games where they normally don't win historically. That's why I felt like this Bears team is just going to be that team that they're going to get into the playoffs. Right now, their point differential at 7-3 is -6 points. So they have been outscored by their opponents by 6 points entering week 12. It's very hard to do. And I talked about the Giants earlier, the 2022 Giants. They were -6 in their point differential that season in 2022. They did win a playoff game in Minnesota, but then got trounced in the divisional round to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if that will ultimately be the same type of outcome for this Bears team, but I just had to point out that for as much as I've been, I don't want to say purposely staying away, but I haven't been someone that has just piled on Caleb Williams. I've kind of done the opposite. I think he's actually played pretty good football, and he does not have a turnover-worthy play in any of the games the past 3 weeks. That's very encouraging if you're a Bears fan. But they are winning ugly, and I think it takes time for a team, a group, a quarterback to understand how to do so. But their point differential of -6 right now needs to turn around if you want to have any good feeling about this Bears team winning a game or even 2 in the NFC playoffs. But I do think they will get there. NFC South and New Orleans Saints. They were on a bye last week. Tyler Shuck, their rookie quarterback, 26-year-old rookie, was coming off his second start in the NFL. 2 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays. And this is what the Saints have down the stretch. And I am not insinuating that I think the Saints are at 2-8 are going to go on some run and sneak into a wild card spot. There's just too many like middle-of-the-pack teams in the NFC for them to do that. And just their roster is not NFC or is not playoff caliber in the NFC. But I think there's a path for the Saints to, and maybe it's just their quarterback, to feel better about the direction of the franchise going into 2026. Here are their final games of the season. And I think I didn't have written down their final game, but it must be one of their divisional opponents. I think it's the Falcons. They have Falcons this week, then the Dolphins, then they're at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, home Carolina Panthers, Jets, Titans, Falcons. I know that, again, there's probably some Saints fan out there that's hoping they run the table and go 9-8 and whatever. When you're a team that's not very good, the chances of running the table are slim to none. But Atlanta, Miami, at Tampa will be tough. Carolina, Jets, Tennessee, Atlanta to finish the season. Could they win 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? They have 7 games left. Can they? I think that's right. Yeah, because they're 2-8. Could they win 3 games? Could they go 3-4 down the stretch? And sure, winning 5 games, you're not feeling great about it. But if they go 3-4 after starting 2-8, they would probably feel pretty good about that. And I think it would probably coincide with Tyler Shuck playing good football. Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young, who I'm not going to say I've totally bashed on purpose. I've just watched the film, and he just has not taken a step forward in year 3. Bryce Young is coming off his best game in the NFL, and that is par for the course for the NFL. Right when you think a team or a player is done, and I will talk about another quarterback and another team on the AFC side that had the same predicament or the same dynamic this past week. Not that it happens every time, but it can happen where you feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown is never going to drop a pass again, and then he does it. Or you can feel like Bryce Young is just not the answer. And then he has his best game in the NFL, throwing for over 400 yards, breaking Cam Newton's franchise record for passing yards in a game. Coming back, storming all the way back against the Falcons, against a really good defense that came into the league or into this game in the top 10 in EPA per dropback allowed. That's just what happens in the NFL sometimes. It's crazy. And it's the first time this game in week 11, in which, by the way, Bryce Young injured his ankle, his previously injured ankle in the first quarter, and then comes back and throws for almost 500 or 450 yards. Crazy. But it was the first game for Bryce Young in which he had an adjusted completion rate of 80+% and had 2 big-time throws and 0 turnover-worthy plays, or had more big-time throws than turnover-worthy plays. He's had 4 games this season where his adjusted completion rate is over 80. So that's a great encouraging fact going forward. But in each of the other 3 times that he's done that, he's had either no big-time throws and no turnover-worthy plays, or more turnover-worthy plays and big-time throws. So this unequivocally, and you just watch the film and you see it, was the best game of Bryce Young's career. Over 80% adjusted completion rate, 2 big-time throws, 0 turnover-worthy plays, and that crazy come-from-behind win against a very good attacking defense and ascending defense until this past week in the Atlanta Falcons. Speaking of the Falcons, it's going to be specific and not anything analytics-based. It's going to be straightforward. Michael Penix done for the year. They got to turn to their $100 million guaranteed backup, Kirk Cousins, who has not been good when he's been on the field. Maybe, with first-team reps and all that, he'll probably play like Kirk Cousins plays. Decently well, but limited. But with Michael Penix, this is the 3rd season-ending knee ligament tear for him since 2018. And I get 2018 was 8 seasons ago, but 2 of his seasons in college ended with torn ACLs. He's healthy in 23 and 24, in 22 and 23 at Washington. Dealt with some knee stuff last year. That's why he didn't play right away. They were kind of slow playing him with Kirk Cousins there. And then he tears his knee ligament again, and he's done for the season. It's one thing I've never been one for the last 15 years. That's my entire career, to be putting a injury-prone label on a player, and that's what I'm not doing here. But that's one facet of Michael Penix's profile that I'm surprised. I don't know if the Falcons just ignored it or didn't care, but made it even more of a risky proposition for them to trade or to pick him inside the top 10. And that was one thing that we all knew and we all understood coming into that draft class, last year's draft class. okay, you're drafting someone that his mobility is just, you watched him from Indiana where he was running all the time to then at Washington where he was barely running, and he looks like he's a 10-year veteran because of the knee injuries. He's had a shoulder injury as well. And I'm not going to say that I think his career is over, but just last week I was like, Michael Penix needs to be better. That was like the Falcons segment. And now it's like such a bummer to end his second season that showed some promise, but not a ton, not as much as his late season audition last year. And now you're like, oh, he's going into his third season. He's an older player too. He was an older prospect because he played so many years in college. And he's coming off a torn ACL, his third since 2018. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the last team here on All 32, Week 11's edition in the NFC South. Jamel Dean went out after the second play against the Buffalo Bills. It's kind of an underrated storyline for, I think, why the Buccaneers struggled so mightily against the Bills. They allowed 44 points on 53 Bills plays. If he's out for an extended period, or even if he just misses this week, Ben Morrison, their second-round rookie from Notre Dame, who I absolutely loved in the pre-draft process, but he's another one, was dealing with hip injuries a ton in college and had, I think, a hamstring to start his rookie year. Ben Morrison and Zion McCollum have to be better. They were not good against this Bills team and this Bills passing offense that everyone likes to say, oh, man, they don't have good receivers. If only Josh Allen had a legitimate number one like he did with Stephon Diggs. It was Tyrell Shavers, a former practice squad guy, Gabe Davis back, who coming off a knee injury. Khalil Shakir had one catch for -3 yards. Josh Palmer, no Dalton Kincaid, and Zion McCollum and Ben Morrison, watching the film, they just got roasted like all game. They need to be better if this Buccaneers team, that I do think is still pretty good and is going to win the NFC South again, if they don't want to just have their, maybe we win a playoff game, maybe we lose a wild card weekend. We have Baker Mayfield. He's now 30 years old. Like, we want to take that next step. Those two young corners, and Zion McCollum is incredibly athletic. So is Ben Morrison. They have to be better with their instincts and just not allowing so much separation, because the Bills receivers, the spacing was really good against that Buccaneers defense. I think Tyke Smith is great. I think, of course, Antoine Winfield Jr. is awesome. And even Jacob Parrish, the rookie slot corner from Kansas State, quality player. Their outside corners outside of Jamel Dean have to be better. So it's just, I'm not calling them out, but Ben Morrison and Zion McCollum have to be better for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go further in the playoffs than they have at any stage of the Baker Mayfield era. Let's move now to across the nation to the NFC West. San Francisco 49ers. Last week, I borrowed from Big Cat from Barstool, from PFT, and from Pardon My Take, excuse me, and said you should buy stock in the San Francisco 49ers now. Look at their schedule. They get a pretty easy win, a weird game, but a pretty easy win over the Arizona Cardinals, a team that last week I said, they've kind of owned during the Kyle Shanahan era. They're in a playoff spot currently, but we know that's all fluid. It's going to change a lot over the last 6 weeks of the season. The next 3 games: Carolina Panthers, Cleveland Browns, Tennessee Titans. Should they win all 3 of those games? Yes. And how about the 49ers get on a win streak? This season, San Francisco has alternated win-loss, win-loss, win-loss every week since week 3. It started in week 3, and since then, win-loss, 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 all the way to week 10. Or week 11, Since week 3, win-loss, all the way until week 11. So I think this is where they will go on their win streak, and they could ultimately get to 10, 11, maybe even 12 wins. It wouldn't shock me. The team that they just beat, the Arizona Cardinals. How weird was that game? It was like, for Jacoby Brissett, in what felt like a blowout for the vast majority of that contest, they were just like, hey, we're not giving up. We're not pulling a Todd Bowles who kneeled the ball at the end of the Bills game, and it instantly made me think of when he knelt the ball or didn't call timeout before the Lions could have attempted a long field goal, up 7 or up 8 in that divisional round game 2 years ago. That was bizarre. They were like, we're going to keep chucking it. And they made that score, 44-22? Jacoby Brissett sets the NFL record for completions in a game. And I think this stat that I'm going to tell you is a little bit inflated due to that. But over the last 4 weeks, the Arizona Cardinals have the highest rate of explosive passes in the NFL. And it's not 20-plus yards. The graph that I saw this week was 15-plus yards. 40.6% of their pass plays have gone for 15 or more yards over the last month for the Arizona Cardinals. And this is, I'm going to pat myself on the back and say, I was saying it about a month ago that the offense is better with Jacoby Brissett than Kyler Murray. Now, you could say, hey, where was the offense in the beginning of that game against the 49ers? And you would have a pretty good argument. So maybe patting myself on the back is probably taking it too far. But I think Jacoby Brissett proved, he almost had 50 completions in a game. That's insane. But if you want an explosive offense, explosive passing offense, even without Marvin Harrison Jr. this past week, look no further than the Arizona Cardinals, the highest rate of 15-plus yard pass plays over the last month in the NFL. Los Angeles Rams, there's one broader point that I want to speak about here, and then one player that ties into that. 4 interceptions of Sam Darnold in that huge win over the Seahawks, which did come down to a 61-yard field goal. If the Seahawks made it, it's a totally different narrative. But those 4 interceptions were really the big talking point or storyline in that game. The one late was just Sam Darnold being Sam Darnold, late, trying to force things, under pressure, trying to dump it down, gets picked. 2 of the interceptions, both by Cam Kinchens, were awesome. I don't want to call them disguise coverages, but like next level, high level coverages that you don't see on a routine basis in the NFL. You do see them every week, but it's not, hey, they were just in cover 4, or they just played man across the board, or it was just cover 4, cover 2. The first one was cover 3 robber, where it looks like it's 2 deep safeties. And then one safety rotates to the middle. The other safety, Cam Kinchens in this case, can patrol the intermediate portion of the field. I did a TikTok video on this. Go check it out. You can also watch it here on YouTube. And he just literally ran across from one hash mark or by the numbers on one side of the field to the numbers on the other side and ran underneath this deep comeback and snagged the football. And there's no way that Sam Darnold can see that. The throw was maybe a tick late and he was a bit pressured, but that cover 3 robber was perfect, especially to feature someone like Cam Kinchens that's so instinctive, had a ton of interceptions at the University of Miami. The other one was on cover 6, which means cover 4 on one side of the field. So the outside corner and the safety have split that half of the field in half again, and they are responsible for a half of a half. The other side was cover 2, where it's 4 plus 2 gives you cover 6, meaning that half of the field, the deep half, is all Cam Kinchens' responsibility. So I think Sam Darnold thought, okay, I see cover 4 over here. That must mean it's cover 4 on the other side, which it normally is. Cam Kinchens is going to have to flow toward the perimeter, and he didn't. He got to stay right on the numbers and just jumped over top of kind of a seam throw to the tight end, Elijah Arroyo, the rookie, another Miami guy that I think would have been his teammate at Miami at some point, to snag that interception. And I'll quickly talk on Kinchens. I was going to say terrible. Yeah, it was bad. A bad workout. Ran in the 4.6s, mid 4.6s, and had a broad jump for the safety position in the 3rd percentile. 110-inch broad jump. Not super explosive. And in watching him on film in these first 2 seasons, I don't really think that Kinchens is one of those players like, oh, he just didn't test well or he didn't train right before the draft, before the combine. He doesn't look particularly explosive or super duper fast. His instincts are through the roof. Cover 3 robber, you usually see a lot of pass breakups or plays on the football where the safety rotates and he makes a play at the middle of the field. On that interception, go watch it. He literally runs across the entire field, just reading the eyes of the quarterback and just getting a sense this is where he's going to go with the football. He has 11 pass breakups, and I believe now 6 interceptions in his 27 games started. So Cam Kinchens is one that is super heady and has impeccable ball skills. And what a great draft pick by Les Snead. One of the many outside of the first round of the draft where the athleticism wasn't there, but they saw the instincts and the playmaking ability and the safety. And by the way, the second year, the 2024 safety class has been really, really good, sneaky good over this first season and a half for that group. And the last team on the NFC side here of Week 11's episode of All 32 in the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks. And everything's been coming up roses for the Seahawks until this past game, where Sam Darnold implodes, he's seeing ghosts, he throws 4 interceptions. Jason Myers misses the field goal at the end of the game. And, I mean, it was 61-yard or whatever, tough. I don't know if it would have, I think it would have gotten there, but it just sailed a little bit to the right. Maybe it was a little short. I'm going to switch gears and just have an opportunity to maybe not be super duper positive for the Seahawks. The last 4 weeks, their explosive pass rate, 15 plus yards, is only 15%. I just talked about it in their own division. The last 4 weeks, the Cardinals' explosive pass rate, 15 plus yards, is almost 41%. That explosive, or was that passes, or I wrote explosive? Oh, so maybe it's overall 15% of their plays have gone for 15 or more yards. So 15 and 15. Over the last month, that is 27th in the NFL. For as ridiculously good as JSN is, and for as much as he and Sam Darnold have been on the same page almost every single week, that's a little concerning if you're a Seahawks fan. Ken Walker has been awesome, and Mike McDonald talked about that this week, that he's probably earned some more carries. Yeah, individually he's awesome. You got to block better. But 15% explosiveness over the last month, that's 27th in the league, not great. All right, jumping now to the AFC side, and as I do this, I will remind you, please like and subscribe to get this show every single week when you go onto YouTube, and to see all of my shorts that I post almost every day, especially early in the week, going back and looking at the film, scouring the analytics for all 32 teams. I love to do that on TikTok, and I post them here on YouTube. So like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. All right, AFC side here, Buffalo Bills. We're starting with the AFC East. How about a pass-first mentality for this team? Coming off a brutal, embarrassing loss in the division in Miami in Week 10, in which entering Week 11, the Bills had the lowest pass rate on first down in neutral score situations. That's when it's a one-score game in the NFL. The Bills' first down pass rate in a one-score game situation entering Week 11 was 32.7%. That's really low when your quarterback's Josh Allen. I know James Cook has become this elite level back, but 32.7% with Josh Allen as your quarterback. Well, guess what it was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? 50%. So like a 17% difference. Josh Allen goes for over 300 yards, has 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns. You've heard about that. It's third time in NFL history, second time for Josh Allen. That's the type of game. And I know that the Bills can't get in these 44 to 32 games every single week, but just the philosophy and the little minor things that you don't think about necessarily watching the game live. But when you go back and look at the numbers, you go, oh yeah, they should be throwing it on first down in one-score game situations, like around 50 to 60% of the time, not 30% of the time. And you can still get James Cook and Ty Johnson involved in the pass game. James Cook had a touchdown receiving. Ty Johnson took a screen 50-plus yards to the house. So even in a game in which the Bills were kind of bottled up in the run game, they were able to score 44 points on 53 plays against the Buccaneers. That is the type of Josh Allen and the type of philosophy that the Bills need to have going forward if they want to stay elite on offense and I think go deep into the playoffs. If they're going to average 2.6 to 2.8 points per drive, which is high level, why would they want to have fewer possessions and control the clock? They want to have as many possessions as possible because their quarterback is Josh Allen. Miami Dolphins, a team that's played a lot better over the last 2 weeks. They get the big win over Buffalo in Week 10. Then some questionable decisions late in the game against a bad Washington Commanders team in Spain, but they get the victory. And I think I pointed this out a few weeks ago, and I wanted to circle back to it to see if it continued. And it has. Since week 6, so it's reasonably sized sample, the Dolphins are 11th in EPA per play in non-garbage time situations on defense. 11th. This was a team that, go back to like the first or second episode that I did of all 32. Like I think I started week 3 or week 4 because I wanted some dynamics to like materialize in the NFL. But I think that week I was like, the Dolphins are going to be the worst defense in the NFL. Them or the Cowboys. Just the personnel was bad. And they even got rid of Jalen Phillips in the middle of that. 11th in EPA per play allowed on defense. And second, since week 6, second in rush EPA per play allowed on defense. So when you play the Dolphins, maybe you can say Tua is limited. He is. They only have Jalen Waddle. Okay, he's really their only major weapon at receiver. But you're facing an Anthony Weaver defense that you're seeing Kenneth Grant play better. You're seeing Jordan Brooks as a great run defender. You're seeing Minkah Fitzpatrick make plays. And they're like on the bottom of the roster players at corner. They're throwing out practice squad guys. They don't have a great pass rush. Bradley Chubb has rushed the passer better the last 2 weeks. Chop Robinson has been injured. But 11th in EPA per play on D and second in rush EPA allowed on defense since week 6 for the Miami Dolphins. New England Patriots. Take this however you want. And maybe I hinted at this a few weeks ago. But this, how you think of this, what this means to you will say a lot about how you view the NFL. Right now, the New England Patriots, I'm going to stay on the EPA per play topic. The Patriots are second in EPA per dropback in non-garbage time situations all season. Second in the NFL in EPA per dropback in non-garbage time. But are 30th in rush EPA per play in non-garbage time. So what does that mean? To me, it's another piece of evidence that I don't want to say the run game doesn't matter, but if you wanted to pick one area that would be second of your team in EPA per play and one area that would be 30th, you want to be second in pass and 30th in rush. The Patriots are 9-2, or actually they're the 1 seed. I right? They would be the 1 seed, I think, at this point. Anyway, whatever there's the Colts, Patriots, and Broncos all have 2 losses, so they're all in those top 3 spots currently. Or you could think, hey, that's a bad sign. They got to be better running the ball. We're getting into cold weather. To me, you want to be passing efficiently and efficiently stopping the pass. And I think the Patriots are a prime example of like, okay, yeah, sure. You want to be good in all areas. You want to have a great defense, a great run game, great pass defense. But they are proof that if you are second in EPA per dropback and 30th in rush EPA, that's okay. You're 9-2. You're feeling really good. You've won 8 in a row if you're the New England Patriots. New York Jets. They go to Tyrod Taylor. They bench Justin Fields, which I think it was time. I want to focus on A.D. Mitchell, the wide receiver. They get him in the Sauce Gardner trade from the Indianapolis Colts. And he is someone that was one of the best separators in football last year. By all of those advanced metrics, he had like one of the highest average separation scores in all of football. And there were these glimmers where you're like, oh my God, he's tall. He's so fluid. And that was really the book on him at Texas. When he was coming out, I didn't love A.D. Mitchell because he wasn't a big yards after the catch guy, but silky smooth route runner. Fast, ran sub 4.4, good vertical, broad jump, all that. Falls out of favor with the Colts, was not targeted on too many accurate passes last season from Anthony Richardson. The Jets get him, and in his first game on Thursday Night Football against the Patriots, he has 3 drops. Mind you, he did not have a drop entering week 11. Like in Indy, not that he was getting thrown the ball a lot, and he was like toward the end there before he got traded, was barely playing. But he's someone that I think has massive potential, and I hope that the Jets with Tyrod Taylor continue to trot him out there and throw him the football. I think they kind of have to. I mean, we'll see if Garrett Wilson plays this week. They don't have a ton of other options in their receiver group, but he's someone that I'm still holding out a little bit of hope for because he can get open and he's really fast and he's really young. He had 4 drops on 51 targets a season ago, which is like not great, but not brutal. There was a few throws from Justin Fields last week where A.D. Mitchell was open and the ball just was not there. But he also did have 3 drops, so it wasn't really the best first impression of A.D. Mitchell if you were a Jets fan. But I guess I'm telling you, if you are a Jets fan and you're looking at really granular things with this team and this roster, do not lose hope on A.D. Mitchell because I think he actually has a fair amount of upside. Okay, jumping now to the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens have this ability, and this will be the second year in a row that they're seemingly doing it, to start horribly on defense and then make a Kyle Hamilton-based adjustment, and then they're like elite. Now, some of it has to factor in with the competition. They played Josh Allen early on and others. But weeks 1 through 7, the Baltimore Ravens were 30th in EPA per play allowed on defense in non-garbage time. Anytime I say that, it's always in non-garbage time. 30th, weeks 1 through 7 for the Baltimore Ravens defense. And that's where we were all saying, this is not the Baltimore Ravens defense we know, blah, blah, blah. Since week 8, they are 4th in EPA per play allowed on D. They've gotten healthier too. And that was a point that I brought up about a month ago, that we tend to underweigh the impact of injuries when it's not a quarterback. Like Roquan Smith is healthy again. Marlon Humphrey's healthy again. Nate Wiggins is healthy again. I still think they have somewhat of a pass rush problem, but from week 8 on, 4th in EPA per play on defense for the Baltimore Ravens. Their bitter rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have allowed an explosive play on defense the past month on 29.5% of the plays that they've seen. That's 31st in the NFL. Now, I think that if it would be going 4 games back, that crazy Thursday night game against the Bengals would be still in there. But talk about a defense that at times looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers defense of TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, all those players, Cam Hayward. And then at times it's like, oh, the Steelers defense is really bad. So they're Jekyll and Hyde for sure. But I just wanted to point out the last month, 29.5% explosive play rate on defense, which is the second worst in the NFL. Cincinnati Bengals, I saw this week from my guy Aaron Schatz, who is a pioneer in the NFL analytics field. I absolutely have so much respect for Aaron Schatz. Met him a handful of times at the Combine. He's always been super gracious with his time. We actually, I think the last 2 or 3 years, talked at the Combine. He's a great dude. Super smart. Inventor of DVOA, which stands for Defensive Adjusted Value Over Average. It's like the most all-encompassing efficiency metric. It's up there with EPA per play. It's like the 2 most. You just want to take a step back and look from the analytics perspective on how a team is playing. DVOA and EPA, those are the 2 juggernauts in the analytics field. I saw he tweeted this week, Aaron Schatz, that the Bengals now have the worst DVOA on defense through 11 weeks in NFL history, or I shouldn't say NFL history, in the DVOA sample, which goes back, like he's gone back to the 80s. He definitely has, I'm pretty sure, the entire 90s. Yeah, he does. He has the duration of the 90s, all the 2000s, all of the 2010s, and into the 2020s. The worst DVOA on defense, Cincinnati Bengals this season. And one other point, flipping over to the other side, I asked this earlier at the outset of this show about Jaden Daniels. Who do the Bengals play this week? Let me see. Well, whoever they play, I'm not going to spend the time looking right now. But if you're the Bengals, do you start Joe Burrow if you're out of playoff contention? If you're 3-9, if you're 4-9 and you're mathematically eliminated, which I don't know if they would be at 4-9, but it would be close. I don't know. I was emphatically like, no, you don't do it if you're the Commanders. And I'm kind of leaning in that direction if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm sure he is chomping at the bit to get back. And I think truly, if there is any chance that's more than a percentage point or 2 for them to, hey, if they win out, they could maybe sneak into the number 7 seed, they'll probably do it. But I wonder if they're mathematically eliminated, if they'll just say, you know what, we're going to shut him down. We're not going to play him because the only concern that we have with Joe Burrow is just his availability, that he's had 3 seasons now where he's had to miss long stretches that has derailed specific Bengals seasons. I just wonder if that will ultimately be the case. I think if he's able to return like 2 weeks from now, that they're still going to be mathematically alive, but they need to start winning games with Joe Flacco again to potentially have the chance for Joe Burrow to come back. Cleveland Browns. I don't understand this. That now there have been a few stretches over the last 3 to 5 years. They have made the playoffs twice under Kevin Stefanski and their GM, Andrew Berry. And I think that's probably why those two guys still have jobs. But you've seen Baker Mayfield in his rookie season, broke a bunch of records. They didn't make the playoffs, but they were pretty good. Then they get to the playoffs, beat Pittsburgh, played a really good Chiefs team, super tight in that divisional round like 4 or 5 years ago. Then they get back to the playoffs when Joe Flacco goes nuts down the stretch in like, what was that, 23, 22, 23? Yeah, 23. No, 22. 22 into 23. But like, how is it so hard for the Browns to find just like competent quarterback play? Right now, collectively, the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks have 9 big-time throws this season and 19 turnover-worthy plays. And going back to last year, 6 of the 7 Cleveland Browns quarterbacks, and last year we're talking Bailey Zappi, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Kenny Pickett, 6 of the last 7 quarterbacks who have started a game for the Cleveland Browns have had a yards per attempt average under 6. 6 of 7. The only one who's been above 6 since the start of 2024 who has started a game for the Cleveland Browns is Jameis Winston. Like, in this day and age in the NFL, if your yards per attempt average is like around 7, it's like, no, that's not great, but it's not bad. You need to be 7.2, 7.5, 8. Then you're getting up to like elite level 8, 9 is crazy high. If you're in the mid 6s, it's like, oh, that's pedestrian. These guys have been under 6. Dylan Gabriel, Shadur Sanders, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Bailey Zappi, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco. 6 of the last 7 Browns quarterbacks who have started a game in the last 2 years under 6 yards per attempt. Insane. The defense is awesome. They just need to find someone who can be competent and confident at the quarterback spot. Okay, 2 more divisions here on Week 11's episode of All 32. Again, please like and subscribe. I very much appreciate you doing those 2 little quick clicks here on this video. AFC South. Hasn't been a lot great to say about the Tennessee Titans, although they have played more competitive football the past 2 weeks. I want to focus individually on their second-year linebacker, Cedric Gray. He has 5 missed tackles this season, but has made 102 tackles. He has been awesome. I watched a little bit of his film earlier today because I remember him coming out of North Carolina just last year. 2 years, or I guess 3 years ago, there was a lot of hype that, oh man, if he comes out, he's going to be a first-round pick. Stays 1 more year at North Carolina, does not have a tremendous final season. I think he dealt with an injury too, and ends up being a 4th-rounder. He's really good blitzing, wrapping up ball carriers as a run defender. I think the coverage, like it does with a lot of linebackers, will eventually come because he's a pretty good athlete. But I just wanted to focus on, Jeffrey Simmons is a guy that you could highlight every week because he's an elite level defensive tackle on a bad team. But I wanted to highlight someone else because the defense has played serviceably the last couple of weeks in Tennessee. Cedric Gray is at the center of that with 102 tackles and only 5 missed tackles. One of the lower missed tackle rates among linebackers in all of the NFL. Indianapolis Colts. There's a pretty interesting nugget here. To me, it's fascinating. The Colts entering Week 12 are one of 5 teams that have a higher EPA per play when rushing the football than they do on a drop back. The other teams are like the Browns. I tweeted this out the other day. The Browns, the Jets. There was maybe the Broncos. I think there was one other team that was not very good. So what does that say? It says that the Colts have an amazing ground game. Jonathan Taylor and JSN, I've said it for weeks, and I think we all agree, are the two front runners to win Offensive Player of the Year. But over the last couple of weeks, Daniel Jones has taken some sacks in the loss to the Steelers, some bad decisions, a lot of turnovers. They're one of 5 teams that gain more expected points rushing the ball than they do dropping back to pass. Almost every other team, 27 other teams have a higher EPA on a drop back than they do rushing the ball, but not the Colts. Houston Texans. I wanted to focus on Davis Mills because I think he deserves a fair amount of respect. I think he is. I did a video on this week, and I was going to say in my voiceover that, oh, he's the best backup in the league. I don't. And then I thought about it. I was like, okay, no, he's probably not the best backup, but he's one of the better ones. He has 6 big-time throws the past 2 weeks, both Houston Texans wins. Now, he does have 5 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 weeks, and 4 of them came against Jacksonville. But I think when you watch the film, you see, which obviously those big-time throws and turnover-worthy plays are extracted from the film. But in me watching the film, it's like, okay, like he can operate the offense. He loves throwing to the first read. Shout out to Joe Marino of Herd Mentality and the Locked On Bills podcast, who was kind of doing some scouting for this Bills-Texans game on Thursday that had that nugget this week. But he loves throwing to the first read, and he's pretty good at doing so. He's big. He's somewhat mobile, has a strong arm. Not an amazing arm, but it's not a low-level arm. And I think he's given the Texans what they could have hoped for when C.J. Stroud goes down. For most teams, if your starter goes down, especially if you have a high-level starter, it's like, oh, my God, like we're toast. But Davis Mills is kind of, I don't want to say studied things to an amazing degree, but back-to-back wins to save your season and keep you 5-5 and keep you afloat in the wildcard race, he's done a pretty good job. Jacksonville Jaguars, another team that, and this was the AFC version of me, I jinxed Amon-Ra St. Brown, saying that he was the surest bet, and the catch rate's super high, and then he has a bad game. Jared Goff has a bad game. Last week, I was short and sweet. I was like, I'm done with Trevor Lawrence. And I don't really think he was great against the Chargers. It was one of the weirdest games that I've seen this season, where like neither quarterback was very good, and both offenses were kind of but one team won 35-6. Strange. Good win for them, of course, against a previously higher than them in the AFC standings type of game in the Chargers. But I want to focus on Bashal Tutin, the rookie quarterback, or the rookie running back who had 20% of his rushes go for over 10 yards against this team, against what was a pretty good Chargers run defense going into it. Now, Travis Etienne did get more carries, 19 carries to 15 for Bashal Tutin, but Tutin outpaced him in the yard category. So he was more efficient running the ball. I absolutely loved him coming out of Virginia Tech. My draft algorithm, Resin, absolutely adored him. He was, I think, my running back 2 in this draft class. They gave him a little bit closer to the same amount of carries as Travis Etienne in this game, and he certainly paid major dividends in this blowout win over what had previously been thought of as a really good Chargers team. And it wasn't like they pressured they pressured Justin Herbert 70% of the time, and no, it was like 39%, which is like par for the course for Justin Herbert in his career. It was just the Jaguars made plays defensively, and they had a pretty steady attack on the ground. Bashal Tutin leading the way. Last division here on Week 11's edition of All 32, AFC West. I'm going to just segue right into the Chargers. What the hell happened in that game? I just mentioned it. Justin Herbert was pressured on 39.1% of his dropbacks. A few weeks ago, it was 64%. I think in Week 10, it was somewhere in the 40s. He was 1 of 5 for 0 yards when pressured, though. And it kind of is a microcosm, a very small sample of I think 3 weeks ago when he was pressured at 64% of the time and was really good against pressure. This is an indicator of why that stat is not seen to be very sticky, because you can make a few plays under pressure, but in general, it's the clean pocket stuff that is more predictive week to week. But what happened in this game? You were facing a Jaguars team that doesn't feel quite as good as their record. You're looking at yourself. in the AFC West, you're seeing the Chiefs continuing to lose one-score games when they were amazing in one-score games last year. And you just completely lay an egg. Now, the season's not over, not even close. They're in good shape. I'm pretty sure they're still in let's see. They're still in a playoff spot. They are, they're in the 6th spot right now, 6th seed at 7-4. But that was just strange. Like, what the hell happened for the Chargers in Week 11? Denver Broncos. I don't know if I mentioned this before. I know I've probably tweeted it, but I realized what the superpower is to date for Bo Nix. You watch Broncos games and you're like, man, down the stretch, like when he needs to make that one big throw, he's done it. In the comeback against the Giants, obviously, he throws the back shoulder this past week to, I think it was Troy Franklin. There was one to Cortland Sutton that got them into field goal range, or maybe that was in the Giants game. But a lot of the game, it's like, man, like Bo Nix is just throwing the ball into the turf. He doesn't operate the offense as efficiently as someone that started like 60 games in college and is in his second season of a Sean Payton scheme. His superpower, Bo Nix, is pressure to sack rate. He does not take a lot of sacks, even when he's pressured. Bo Nix's pressure to sack rate, if we're not counting Brock Purdy, who has barely played, it is the best in the NFL, 9.8%, which is super low. Josh Allen led this stat category a season ago, and it was like around 10. And usually like the best quarterbacks are between 10 and 15. He's at 9.8 right now. So a lot of those like throws into the dirt where it's a 3rd and 6, and you're like, oh, what the hell was that? Or a 2nd and 10, you're like, dude, there was someone open. He's just not taking sacks. He's not getting this team into 2nd and 17, 3rd and 15 very often. Even when he's pressured, you can say, okay, yeah, like you don't want your quarterback to take a lot of sacks in general. But if your offensive line isn't good, or if you're facing a really good pass rush, sometimes your quarterback's going to be pressured. And Bo Nix is the best quarterback this season so far at avoiding sacks after he's been pressured. I'll be very quick and very general with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Avalanche started, I think, with the whole Christian Wilkins release, all of that fiasco. But, man, I was so wrong on them. I wrote an article. I did a Substack over the summer that I called Trap Sheet. And I wrote this whole piece on, like, Geno Smith. He's been so accurate. You have one of the most underrated receivers in football in Jacoby Myers, who's, like, low-key amazing in contested catch situations. You've drafted Ashton Genty. You've added to the offensive line. You have Malcolm Kuntz coming back to pair with Max Crosby. You finally have a key cog in the middle in Christian Wilkins. Was a little dicey about the secondary. Kind of felt like maybe the secondary is not going to be amazing. But I thought this team was going to be competitive in the AFC West. And they're not even competitive in the entire AFC. The offensive line is atrocious. I feel so bad for Ashton Genty, who is running so hard and is still so darn elusive and has tremendous contact balance. But you watch him, and there is just never anywhere for him to run. And Geno Smith has become a shell of his former self. He can't really move in the pocket. Not that he was really a big pocket mover in Seattle, but I think he's like lost another step from even his time there last season. And now obviously Jacoby Myers is gone. They're not including my guy, Jack Bech. They threw him like one pass on a drag route that he ran for like 20 yards early in that game against the Cowboys and not much else. Brock Bowers, I feel bad for him. He's absolutely one of the superstars in the NFL today. But, man, that whole setup there with all these big-name guys, with Tom Brady as a minority owner, Pete Carroll as the head coach, Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator, and I love their draft class. I think John Spytek had a really good draft. Maybe, though, retroactively, you're going to look back and go, in hindsight, maybe if your offensive line is really bad, you don't draft a running back inside the top 10. I mean, I say it, I think, 5 to 10 times every year on shows and podcasts that I'm on, and I probably write it too. I have a shirt that says running back, don't draft running backs in the first round. So as much as I absolutely loved Ashton Genty, my draft algorithm was like, cha-ching, checkbox, like he's checkmark. He's really that good from the analytics perspective. There's nowhere for him to run. Like, he can make 10 guys miss, and he's going to turn a 3-yard loss into a 2-yard gain. And he's done that a lot this season. And the last team on Week 11's episode of All 32. Please like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Kansas City Chiefs. Interesting nugget. I mentioned earlier with the Cincinnati Bengals that Aaron Schatz said that they have the worst defensive DVOA through Week 11 in his whole database. It goes back to the 80s. He also had really interesting nuggets. And I'll kind of go through all the other teams, and I'll end with Kansas City. I saw the tweet from Aaron Schatz that was like the Carolina Panthers at 6-5? 6-4, 6-5. The Panthers at 6-5 are one of the worst by DVOA, one of the worst 6-5 teams in his database. What else was it? The Chicago Bears, I believe, are one of the worst 7-3 teams in his database. Interestingly, the Patriots at 9-2 were one of the worst 9-2 teams in DVOA in Aaron Schatz's database. And the Kansas City Chiefs were one of the best, maybe even the best, 5-5 teams in his DVOA database. I don't know if it was the best, but it was certainly up there. It was like in the top 5 or 10, like dating back to the early 80s. And they have scored, the Kansas City Chiefs have scored either a field goal or a touchdown, so some type of score, on 48.9% of their drives entering Week 12. That is the highest scoring rate per drive for any Chiefs team the last 4 seasons. So that gives you kind of an indicator of like, oh yeah, well, that makes sense then that they're one of the best DVOA teams that is 5-5 through their first 10 games. 48.9% of the time that the Chiefs have the ball, they either score a touchdown or kick a field goal. And it's higher than last year's Chiefs team, the back-to-back Super Bowl Chiefs team, or the 2021 Chiefs team. Now, from 18, Patrick Mahomes' first year as a starter, to 20, they were like in the 50s, but they're almost to 50. They're at 48.9%. So I expect the Chiefs to start winning some games and at a small sample level, reverting back to the mean again, from going from 11-0 in one-score games to regressing back to the mean and starting 0-5. I think they're going to start to win some of these tight games and become a player in the AFC wildcard race, or even in their own division, potentially. All right, guys, that'll do it for me today on All 32. I'm Chris Trapasso. One more time, I got to say it. Please like and subscribe, share these videos, send any of the segments to any of your friends that like different teams than you. And maybe you have a lot of those friends, maybe not. But also, lastly, I will point out, this is like kind of the idea that I had for this weekly series. After I'm done here, click on your team's clickable timestamp underneath to go directly to your team segment. So if you missed the Colts, if you missed the Vikings, if you want to hear about the Dallas Cowboys, you don't have to try to find where I talked about them. I will, right in the description below, I will include your team's segment, clickable timestamp, so you can go right to your team segment. Again, I'm Chris Trapasso. This was All 32, and thank you so much for watching.